Who's your favorite superhero? And you can't say Tony Soprano or Christ the Redeemer. You have an answer yet? Well, I have an answer. Just give me a second. It's this guy. Peter Parker, Spider-Man, Miles Morales, Miguel O'Hara, Gwen Stacy. That's right, Spider-Man. Thank you to my girlfriend for giving me this nice wallet. I like it a lot. So, that's right. Spider-Man, everyone likes him, okay? There's not one person in the world that dislikes this man. Not even your uncle. And he doesn't even do his taxes. And he still likes Spider-Man. So that just goes to show that this is a guy that everyone loves, right? But if there's one thing that people know Spider-Man for, it's his movies, all right? The cinema. You go to the movies, you get popcorn, you get a Mr. Pibb, and you watch Spider-Man, right? What was the last Spider-Man movie you watched? I'm sure it was, I don't know, No Way Home. Or Spider-Man 2, maybe, depending on what year you're from. But today, I thought it was a good idea to finally rank my Spider-Man movie list, however you want to call it. I don't know. I'm not on tier list anymore. I don't like that website. And it only makes sense that Spider-Verse 2, it's on its way, so I might as well do it now before Spider-Verse 2 comes out. And it, like, takes the number 2 spot in my list anyway. So that's just eventual. Like, it's inevitable. So sit down, get your science book. Do you get it? Because he's a scientist. And make sure to bring some cranberries. But don't beat an old lady with a stick to get them. He got that reference.
I got it.
All right. It's not... So just laughing, whatever. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is garbage. It is one of the worst superhero movies of all time. I don't think it takes a rocket scientist or Otto Octavius to see that this movie is doo-doo water. All right? Listen, I love Andrew Garfield. He's a great actor. I love Emma Stone. She's a great actress. I really like Jamie Foxx. He's funny. Dane DeHaan, he's okay. But what went wrong with this movie? Well, a lot of things went wrong with this movie, all right? Mark Webb, he is a good director. If you guys have seen 500 Days of Summer, that is a good romantic comedy / drama movie. It hits. And funny enough, the best scenes in both of these Amazing Spider-Man movies, which I'll get to the other one later, are the scenes between Peter and Gwen, right? But a thing that this movie fails to recognize is, you know, how Spider-Man really, like, works. And that happens in, like, the first 5 minutes of the movie. When Spider-Man, well, aside from the stupid spy espionage stuff that his parents are doing, which I thought was irrelevant and dumb, but whatever. Peter Parker's parents seems to be an important part in these films anyway. The first 5 minutes, Spider-Man is letting people get run over on the sidewalk while he's trying to quip at Alexei, say it. Alexei Sitsevich, played by the greatest actor of all time, Paul Giamatti, with a phenomenal Russian accent. But whatever. That's one thing. Another thing I really don't like about this movie, the soundtrack. And I know, Pharrell Williams and Hans Zimmer produced this soundtrack. And listen, everyone has their bad days, okay? Michael Jordan didn't make his free throws, and he also gambled. But if there's one thing about Michael Jordan, he still came in the clutch. So do Pharrell and Hans Zimmer, just not in this movie, all right? Electro, he's not very good at communicating his thoughts, so the music does it for him. Very specifically, there's that scene where Electro's really mad, and the soundtrack is saying, they hate you, or what is it, they don't like you.
Yeah,
they lied to me. Even though they could have just gotten Jamie Foxx to, you know, express that better in the script. It doesn't matter. Andrew Garfield, going back to him, he's really good, but what's up with the accent, man?
You got a briefcase.
Why do you have a briefcase?
You got a briefcase.
This is not this is what I'm saying with Mark Webb. You're good at directing actors. That's why 500 Days of Summer was a good movie. Why are you not going in and going, hey, stop this. Let's redo the scene. It seems to be a thing with these Sony, like primarily Sony movies in general, that are heavily controlled by the dictator of the entire Hollywood industry, Avi Arad, where he doesn't understand Spider-Man, and then he gets these talented directors to make, well, this one talented director, Mark Webb, to make this movie, and then be like, okay, but guess what? You have to include this in the movie, so make sure you have our Sony computers and cameras in the movie. Oh, and you also have to make sure that, I don't know, there's, what else is really, Bad. There's some really bad product placement in general, and also just a failure or a complete misunderstanding of the character. Spider-Man is this guy who's supposed to, have go through all these things and then but still feel like a hero. For some reason, I just don't get that feeling when Spider-Man does anything in this movie except for one montage when he breaks up with Gwen Stacy for a little bit, and then he helps the kid with the science project, and then he saves that woman from getting run over by a bus. That was great, but that's like 2 minutes of a movie that's almost 2 hours, I'm pretty sure. Also, again, Gwen Stacy, they have to kill her off. It's predictable. I understand why they did it. This movie is heavily emphasizes the love story between these two, but it just doesn't work because you already know what's going to happen. So when it does happen, it is a good scene, but you're just sort of like, well, I mean, there you go. It was supposed to happen eventually. Dane DeHaan's not a good villain. As Green Goblin, I think I don't know why he needs Spider-Man's blood so bad. It's not going to save him, and I don't know why Peter just doesn't give it to him and be like, well, that didn't work, I'm sorry.
He's a fraud.
And it's just not really good. It's hard. I can go more in depth on saying why this movie sucks, but you just watch the movie and it just doesn't work. Oh, and the worst thing about the movie, that For You song. I don't like it. Philip Phillips, I hope you're doing well wherever you are, but that song is it's probably like one of the reasons why I skipped that entire segment of him trying to find out what his dad was telling him. Awesome. His dad created the spiders. Whatever. The Amazing Spider-Man 2, not a good movie. I'm sorry. All right. When I tell you that, as a kid, I really enjoyed this movie. I mean it. I went to the theater when I watched this movie. I told my parents, wow, Spider-Man is awesome, after I watched this movie. And then I rewatched this movie, and I go, kids are stupid. The Amazing Spider-Man. Now, is this movie one of the worst movies in the world? Is this movie a terrible movie? No. Is it a good movie? No. Is it a watchable movie? Yes. But, like, barely. One of the biggest flaws I have with it, of course, like I mentioned in the first one, Andrew Garfield, as good of an actor as he is, Mark Webb, or whoever wrote it with Mark Webb, I know he had a big hand in it, but at the same time, he's working stuff out. He doesn't really understand Peter Parker, so you have Peter walking into high school on a skateboard and just not really emitting that sort of wallflower energy that, someone like even Tobey Maguire, who isn't giving the best performance, but is giving a more believable performance as Peter Parker. And then eventually Tom Holland, who I think does it the best, but I'll discuss that later. The Lizard. He wants to turn people into lizards. Everyone's lizards. That's a great plan. And guess how he does it? A giant gas sky thing spreads around the whole city. That's a genius plan. It doesn't work, but it almost worked. I really don't like Dennis Leary in the movie, and that's mainly just a personal preference because I think Dennis Leary is a fraud, and he stole Bill Hicks's entire persona for stand-up comedy. Also, I just don't really like his performance in this movie too much. He's just there. And I think another big part of this movie that I definitely am not a fan of is just how long it takes to really get things going. Like, you don't really start to believe... And I never really am into Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man from the entirety of the movie. But even the scene where he gives the kid his mask, which I thought was a great scene, that's I think at the halfway point or more than halfway into the movie, and then I'm just like, okay, what else are they going to do from here? And then just rush the entire other acts. And you also have the fact that he wrote his name on his camera that he put in the lizard's lair, property of Peter Parker. That's genius. It's not, but it's funny. I'm just not the biggest fan of this movie. I know some people, as of late, have really been having a case of revisionist history syndrome, where they want to look back at movies like this and be like, they're not that bad. These are pretty good. They have these couple of scenes that are awesome. But at the end of the day, what does that make? It's just a couple of scenes that don't equate all that much to a great movie. But I mean, It's just how I feel. I do really like the Spider-Man theme for this movie. I think it was James Horner that did that, and I think he did a good job with that as well. Also, good swinging scenes. Mark Webb with the first-person shots of Spider-Man swinging is very cool, and I think he does understand that part pretty well. But that's really about it. Everything else is pretty self-explanatory. Emma Stone's also in the movie. She does a job that she's just there to do her job. It's not Emma Stone at her best, but it's because she's kind of limited there. I do like the relationship, but that's it. And then the ending has one of the most abrupt last lines I've ever heard, where he just goes, what does he say? Sorry. Oh, I found it. There it is. It's when his teacher's talking. Right here. What does he say? Okay, this is gonna be good. So he's
basically spitting all over.
Oh, Captain Stacy's death. He's basically going, oh, but those are the best kind. Not keeping my secret.
Jesus Christ.
Those are the best kind. Like he grittied all over his grave. But yeah, The Amazing Spider-Man 1, not a good movie either. Slightly better than The Amazing Spider-Man 2, but like The Amazing Spider-Man 1's like a 3 out of 10, and The Amazing Spider-Man 2, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is a 3 out of 10. The Amazing Spider-Man 1's like a 4, maybe a 5 if I'm like happy or I'm like watching it with other people and we'd like laugh at it.
Those are the best.
But those are the best. All right, next one. You so far are we right now?
House.
Well, I guess for me, I'm pretty far from home.
Aha! Nice.
Number 7 is Far From Home. And this movie slowly gets lower on the list after a while. And not because I think it's like bad or anything. I just think that when you compare it to the movies on top of it, even the next one is going to maybe surprise a couple people. It's just kind of... The things that I really liked about it at first are just done better in the next one after. And also, some of the things I didn't like are kind of amplified. So number 1, I'll already get this out of the gate here. I think Tom Holland is the best at playing the character of Peter Parker Spider-Man. He's the most believable. He really exudes that energy where I go, I really want to root for this guy. And it's very natural, as opposed to the other two doing it, like playing the same characters. I really like Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio. I think he and Peter are definitely have a great, like back and forth in this movie, as do most of the villains in this John Watts trilogy. And, seeing Jake Gyllenhaal just lose it and scream about drones is great stuff. I think that was like the best creative decision in this movie. Also, I think the third act is very strong. I think that's the best part of this movie. Once you get to that third act where things start to like lose control and then Peter has to step up and create his new suit and fight these drones and has that really good spider sense scene. Not Peter Tingle, spider sense scene. It's great. And when he grabs the gun, that was hard. That was raw. Oh, yeah. Now, negatives I have for this movie, I think it does take a while to sort of get into the flow of things. I understand that the first half is more of like a kind of like a teen comedy romance thing, and as much as I don't dislike it, it's not like... I think that's done so well in Homecoming that you're getting those good elements and you're putting in this movie, but for some reason I just it doesn't click as well. And maybe it's because Far From Home is a movie that happens right after Endgame, so it's supposed to be like a little depressing. And when it is depressing, or when it has those moments where you really understand Peter's emotions and why he doesn't want to put on the suit, it works. But that doesn't happen until a little bit later into the film, and you kind of have certain scenes that, like, looking back on, I'm just not crazy about. Like, Peter just giving Mysterio the Friday glasses?
Yes, the shades.
The shades immediately is like, I get he's young, so that's like, you're supposed to understand that, but it's like a little too much, just like a naiveness for me. And I'm someone who really defends the John Watts trilogy a lot. I know some people aren't the biggest fans, but for that one, it's a little too much. I don't like the barf joke about the fact that Tony Stark named Mysterio's technology barf. I was like, that's not funny. And I don't like that it's tied again to Tony, because I don't mind that the movie has this cloud of Tony Stark's death over the film, because obviously that was like a father figure to Peter. And I think if it was just that was talked about at the end of the movie, or when they show the mural, I think that's enough. But having another villain that is linked directly to Tony Stark just doesn't feel right. It feels like in this movie already they should be moving past it, and they just kind of rehash it, and it kind of it feels kind of repetitive there. I think from there on John Watts should have moved on from it, which he does in the last one, which we'll talk about again movie. I mean, we'll talk about that movie later. I mean, we're at home, so you get it. But overall, I just don't love this one. I like this one, but that's kind of the thing with Spider-Man movies. Besides the last two I just mentioned, all of these are likable films that you can definitely enjoy, but there are those, not small few, but those few that I really go, I love this movie. I can rewatch it as many times. I can just enjoy this character and all these elements that really bring out the story and the action, the cinematography, all these things that I know it's a superhero movie, but there's still basic elements of a movie that you have to get done right. Also, some of the CGI in this movie is a little depending on, it's not as bad as other Marvel movies, but it's kind of in the middle in certain points. For the most part, it's okay, but And I really like the ending, though. I will go and say that the ending and post-credit scene really hit, and I think it's another reason why the next movie, it's not a shock what that movie is, but the next one that comes after does a really good job of handling that stuff. So, Far From Home, not much to say as well. It's good. Good movie. Spider-Man 3. So good. That's a reference. A reference to, another one right there, even though it's not from Spider-Man 3.
It's a reference to a reference.
Spider-Man 3 is a misunderstood masterpiece. No. But it's not that bad. Now listen, I've always wanted to talk about this, and I'll probably talk about this in a future video, but I think sometimes people confuse bad with disappointing. A disappointing movie would entail something that really sets up your expectations to be the best one in the trilogy or whatever string of movies, or just in general, and then kind of lets you down. I will say that is Spider-Man 3. Spider-Man 3 begins in a very, very, guns blazing, oh my god, this could actually be the best Spider-Man movie of the three. You have the relationship between Peter and Harry Osborn, played by James Franco. Ooh, can't say his name right now. Played by James Franco. You have the relationship between Peter and Mary Jane, which I've never been the biggest fan of that part of the Raimi movies, but, in this one, it's comfortable, but you can understand that they can go somewhere with it, like how they tease it in Spider-Man 2, which I will get to later. And then you have the fact that you can work with Sandman as a villain, and you can work with Green Goblin as a villain. And, they introduce Venom. Not a good thing, but you still have hope. You have hope that this is going to be, the real, Lord of the Rings. What's the name of the last one? The Return of the King, oh my god, we got it. It's in the bag. Now, it was not in the bag. The bag faded away pretty quickly. But instead of a bag, we got a box. A box of fun toys. It could be any toy. It could be a bouncy ball. It can be macadamia nuts. Cookies with nuts in them. It can be funny sweater vests. You see where I'm going with this? Exactly. I know you already thought of it. Spider-Man 3 is just really fun. It's a really fun movie. It is a movie that transcends the meaning of a bad movie. Because a bad movie has the elements of bad story, weak pacing, characters doing things that make no sense, and just an overall disregard of filmmaking in general. But that's not what Spider-Man 3 is. Spider-Man 3 still has some of the best elements of the Raimi trilogy, which is great action scenes, great sound editing, really cool villains. There's still good villains in this movie. They're just not used properly, but they're there. Tobey Maguire is really awkward, but that's what makes him likable. He's America's sweetheart. And this movie is also really funny. Now, the other ones are more, there's a good mix of intentionally and unintentionally funny. This one was very much funny because it was bad. But I don't blame the bad parts on Sam Raimi. I blame it on the guy up there. No. I don't mean Yeshua. I mean Avi Arad. But I digress. This movie has some great quotables. I'm going to let them say a couple right now.
Here's a change.
That's number 2.
Out of your mind. You're out, Eddie.
That's the first one.
Mind.
That's the first one. As he said, it's a Green Goblin.
That's a lot of sand, man.
No. Oh, this is underrated. Spider-Man at the beginning of the movie, not the beginning, when he enters the festival, what does he say?
They love me.
And he also says, Shazam! He says Shazam. He predicted Shazam 11 years before it came out. And Shazam's not even a Marvel property. It's a DC property.
You know, they had such a good thing going until they hired Gendy Tartakovsky to direct their last movie.
He just watched Primal, that's why he's...
The wound is fresh.
But yeah, Spider-Man 3, it's one of those movies...
Go make me some cookies with nuts in it.
There you go, he finally said one. Personal favorite of mine is, you want forgiveness? Get religion.
You'll get your rent when you fix this damn door!
That's another classic. I also really like when Mary Jane sees Peter swing, like he's like Spider-Man and everyone's clapping for him, and then she gets mad that her boyfriend is getting positive feedback. But it's just not... I think Mary Jane is also at her most unlikable in this movie too. But I just think that when you compare it to the John Watts trilogy, you really see how you properly do that character justice. And I think with Sam Raimi, she's just not at her best. And no disrespect to Kirsten Dunst, who is a great actress. Watch the Marie Antoinette movie and watch The Virgin Suicides. But you know, I guess it's just a thing where I'm just not the biggest fan of her in these films. But I personally would have been fine if Mr. Dickovich was the love interest. I mean, or his daughter, sorry. She made him nuts, cookies with nuts in them. But yeah, Spider-Man 3, very fun movie. And a movie that to this day lives in infamy. But how much of that is good? And how much of that is bad? Well, for me, it lands number 6. And now we talk about the beginning. That's right. Spider-Man 1. When you think of the word superhero movie, you think of...
Man of Steel?
You don't think of Man of Steel. Don't say that again, please. No.
I think of the Tick.
No, okay, no. That's a great hero, though. Before 2002, you think of Batman. You think of Superman. You think of the scrapped Fantastic Four movie. You think of
The Mask.
Darkman. Darkman's actually really good. Watch that movie.
Hellboy.
You think of... No, Hellboy didn't come before that one. Or you think of X-Men. X-Men was actually the, I would say the first of that whole millennium. But Spider-Man 2 was the movie that made people realize that, hey, I could watch a movie about a superhero a lot. Like, I could watch a movie like this, more times than I can count. And that's what spawned this entire civil war we're having right now. And I don't mean Marvel Civil War. Well, I do, but I mean Marvel and DC.
He's in that.
And he's also in that movie. Spider-Man 1 was that movie. You have Sam Raimi directing. Everyone goes, what? But Sam Raimi only makes low-budget horror movies. How is he going to make a big-budget superhero movie? Well, sit your candy ass down, because he did it. Sam Raimi did it. And he did it by keeping his same style and making a story that was, this is the most important thing, emotionally compelling. What is the most important factor of making a good Spider-Man movie? We actually care about Spider-Man. And honestly, that's not a hard thing to do. Spider-Man is the most relatable superhero out there. More relatable than Plastic Man. sadly, and I do like Plastic Man a lot. He's more relatable than Sentry. He's more relatable than the Joker, because he's Peter Parker, right? He's a guy who has a job. He's a guy who's going through, some relationship troubles, some financial troubles. But at the end of the day, what's the thing that he cares about the most? Saving the city, keeping the people happy, fighting crime, eating pizza. That's what we all strive for, right? And I think, as much as I'm not the biggest fan of Tobey Maguire's performance, I think him just being in the movie kind of embodies that. Tobey Maguire is a likable actor. What does that mean? Well, I've never thought that he was a particularly great actor, but he is a very likable actor. Just like Keanu Reeves is a very likable actor. Just like Antonio Banderas is a very likable actor. Just like Luke Wilson is a very likable actor. These guys aren't there to give you Best Actor for the Oscars that year, but they're there to make you want to stay and watch the movie because they have that it factor. They're on screen and you go, this is a guy that I want to root for. And Sam Raimi, and I think this was an on-purpose choice because I'm biased. I do think Sam Raimi is a genius, one of the greatest filmmakers the past 20 years, more than 20, 30 years, whatever, 40, how many years? He gets it. And to make a superhero movie that, especially now, you compare a movie like Spider-Man to, like, I don't know, like the new Eternals or World of Warcraft live action, or all of the new like Marvel stuff now, you start to see like how special these Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies are. They have such a unique voice that no one else has been able to replicate that. And I really, truly believe that. Because if that were the case, if it were easy to make that kind of movie, then Marvel would have copied that formula. But they didn't do that. They got Joss Whedon to make Avengers, and they said, Joss Whedon, we are going to do what you do, and then we're going to do it for all of our movies. For the most part, that's what they did. But Sam Raimi, his is so... It's such a distinct... And not to discredit Joss Whedon's works, because I know can't talk about him either, but he has made some stuff that I really enjoy. But Sam Raimi is just so out there. His style is just so him that if... with the new Doctor Strange, if they got someone else to direct that, and they made the movie like that, I don't think it would come out the same way, because only Sam Raimi can pull these things off. You have Tobey Maguire catching his lunch, and it took 217 tries to do that. Sam Raimi said, we're going to keep doing that. He did it. You have... How can I not talk about...
He actually caught his lunch?
That was real. Yeah. That was practical. Sam Raimi's about that practical stuff with a little mix of CGI. Now, the CGI is a little bit rough, but whatever. He didn't really go too much with it. He kept it practical for the most part.
That fly, man.
Yeah. This fly goes crazy. You have, what's his name? Willem Dafoe, the Green Goblin, arguably the best villain in all of the Spider-Man movies that have come out in the past 20 years. Who, let's just say, he gets a little freaky, right? He's not afraid to get in your face and say what's what and tell you what's going on. I think it's evident when he looks at Spider-Man and he goes, eventually, they'll hate you. And it's true, because that is a key part of Spider-Man's character. Eventually the city does hate him at times. People stop trusting him in his life because they think that, outside of being Peter Parker, he has nothing going on, so that he has to be lying to them. Why is he late to everything? Why is he doing this? And it's true, sometimes the people do love a hero, but they do love to see a hero fail. But even when that happens to Spider-Man, he keeps going. And when he kills and impales Green Goblin with his own jet, you really feel that, hey, this kid's a good kid. And he only cares about New York City. And Aunt May. And pizza. And he didn't tell Harry. Well, he did, but it wasn't his fault. It was a whole set of events that turned out. But yeah, there's something about this movie just makes me a little emotional. Could be nostalgia. It could be a melting pot of things. Cinematography, the soundtrack, Danny Elfman going off, the performances that just work in this intentionally, corny, but, you know, a good corny kind of superhero movie. It just gets it. And it's revolutionary. It is what some would call a classic. And I'm not afraid to throw that word around with this movie. I don't even think it's a perfect film. It's by no means a perfect film. But it is a classic. So Spider-Man 4... Spider-Man 4 never came out, I'm sorry. Spider-Man 1, you make the number 5 spot.
We're going to make Spider-Man 4.
I wish. People still go on Twitter and do a hashtag.
Hashtag of Men and Monkeys makes
Spider-Man 4, yeah.
Make it trend! Sorry, guys.
Let me go again. Number 4 and number 3, kind of a toss-up for me. Because these next two movies that I'm going to talk about are really good. And they almost hit the same spots, for, like the same, you know, emotional beats and story points at different points of this character that we're talking about, Spider-Man, Peter Parker. But I'm not sure which one is better than the other. It's very hard for me to choose. So they're interchangeable, regardless of which one I put now at number 4 and number 3. But I'm still going to put Homecoming at number 4. Now, John Watts is a controversial Spider-Man figurehead. A lot of people think that he MCU-ified Spider-Man and made him not as likable or not as serious or important of a character because, you know, he's a teenager and he kind of doesn't get the character. He doesn't get that Spider-Man has to be miserable and that Spider-Man can't just be, you know, Mr. Stark, Mr. Stark, Mr. Stark. I get it. But I don't think these movies are like that. I think the only one that's really like that is sort of Far From Home, and then when he's in a, like, team-up movie. But solo, these movies don't really give me that vibe. Like, Homecoming is an example of this. I think what John Watts is able to do by reinventing Spider-Man, and instead of doing the Sam Raimi route, which is going the, you know, intentionally corny, but, like, really, like, in-your-face, almost like it's off the wall, like how a superhero movie could be, you know, like very much like a comic from the 60s or 70s where it's like this is, you know, this is like the, I think what they would mention back in the day, it's like the Silver Age of comics. Like that's what it feels like, and does a great job of doing that. But with Homecoming, John Watts is taking Spider-Man and going, wait a minute, Spider-Man as a protagonist is very similar to that of a high school teenager from a John Hughes movie from the 80s. You know, you look at a character like Spider-Man, and you look at, you know, like a character like almost like Ferris Bueller, which is referenced in Homecoming. It's actually pretty funny the way they recreate that scene, or that whole, like, chase thing. It was cool. Or, you know, obviously not with the same, like, disregard for, you know, authority and, like, kind of this bad boy image, but sort of like that same charm, that same energy. And the story itself, the way high school is, I think it's a very, as much as some would say it could be like it's benefited from taking another time and you know putting a modern twist on it. I think it's also a pretty, like, just realistic perspective on high school and, you know, just how it is being a sophomore and dealing with things, going to, like, this tech school and, you know, trying to be with this girl you like, but you have responsibilities, which is a very important part of Spider-Man, which I don't get why people seem to think that he doesn't get it, even though he gets that part really well. So I just really like that take that John Watts does. Again, Tom Holland really shines in this movie. I think even though I think in Civil War he already killed it, but in this movie he shows again, hey, I am Peter Parker. Like, this guy, even outside of these movies, just gives off that energy. And even the emotional scenes in this movie, which I'm just going to get right into this, that scene where he has to lift the rubble, which is an homage to a classic Spider-Man moment in the comics when he has to do the same thing to get Aunt May her pills, is iconic. I think in the comic and in the movie, it is done incredibly well. I think it really hammers home the point of the movie, which is Peter learning that he really has to step into his own as a hero by not asking others for help. Because throughout a lot of the movie, his problems when they're about to like really sink in on him, he has Mr. Stark to come in and say, all right, I'm going to fix this up for you, but here are the consequences. Now Peter is taking these consequences, but he's also just, toughening up, sort of growing up, which is, I think, a big part of these, like, the point of this movie is growing pains. You have his performance, and you have that scene. You have Vulture, played by Michael Keaton, which I do go into sort of a extensive dive in this video called The Science of Creating Stakes in Film. Should be right here. It'll be...
That's on the other side.
It'll be on the other side. It'll be right here. It'll be right here. But just to give a small overview of that, entire relationship, what Vulture is in the comics is kind of the same in this movie, but a little more different. Adrian Toomes now is humanized a little more. He's not just some grumpy old dude who got wronged out of his company and now he's just trying to like be a nuisance and get revenge. Now, he has a family. He was a construction worker who's like, how am I supposed to get paid now? I just got laid off. Well, I have to feed the family. He's got a Walter White Breaking Bad the situation here. So he's going to sell weapons. He's going to be a bad guy. But he's being a bad guy for reasons that you can understand and sympathize with as a viewer. That's very important. Because when you have these scenes of Peter telling Vulture, hey, you're selling weapons is bad, doing this is bad. And then Vulture goes, well, listen, I'm just trying to provide. If anything, we should blame, Tony Stark for, doing this to these workers who are just trying to get by. And that's where that relationship kind of goes of Vulture trying to create this wedge between Peter and Tony, subtly. Even though it doesn't work, it really puts things into perspective about just these power dynamics in the movie itself. I also think the soundtrack, very solid. I really like Michael Giacchino's score. And in this one, it's a little more light. It's the classic, I like when he does the little, like, tiptoe scenes where Spider-Man's just trying to sneak around and do stuff, so the theme is a little bit lighter. And I do like when it hits more, especially near, I don't know if he does it in this movie. I think near the end he does, I'm pretty sure. But whatever. I think Michael Giacchino, great person to kind of bring back that Spider-Man charm. And I'm going to say it. I actually like the way the movie ends. A lot of people don't like that Aunt May sees Peter put on the suit, and then she's like, what the... Cut, because my movie's not allowed to use the, that word. Oh my god, that happened. Whatever. But introducing Aunt May already as someone who knows Peter's identity works really well for the next movie we're going to talk about. Spider-Man No Way Home. Spider-Man No Way Home. Thank you, Soups. Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, I actually watched this movie with the two other people in this room, and I have to say, one of the best theater experiences of my life. I'd say confidently. Now, that's the first watching experience. Off an experience alone, Spider-Man No Way Home is probably like, it's perfect. It's what you want. But now I have to grade it as a movie. No Way Home isn't just a, what some would say, nostalgia trip that you really like at first, but then you rewatch it and you go, it's not as good. Personally, I don't think so. What happened?
That's exactly what it was to us. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Not to me, personally. So,
Your video, man.
there you go. The duality of man. I think rewatching this movie, it handles old elements of Spider-Man movies, fixes the parts that didn't really work, not in extensive detail, but minor things that make you go, oh, I like this. Andrew Garfield, for example, proves that he can be the best Spider-Man out of the three. He just got really bad cards. He was rolling a 1 on those Amazing Spider-Man movies, and it's not his fault, because in this movie he shows he's perfect for this role. I think he's great. I think Tobey Maguire being like, the fun middle-aged dad kind of like trying to give advice and stuff is also really good as well. I think this movie, the John Watts trilogy haters cannot go, this movie doesn't get Spider-Man. Because this movie really gets Spider-Man. It gets Spider-Man so much, or he wanted to make sure people knew that he got Spider-Man so much that he brought back the 2 other Spider-Man to teach the current Spider-Man how to be more like Spider-Man.
He got 3 Spider-Man.
He got 3 Spider-Man. That's how much he gets Spider-Man. Look at how the movie ends. Peter has no family, no friends, no knowledge, no reason. Exactly. And that's not true, the knowledge and reason part. But he's exactly where a lot of people want him to be, and that's incredibly miserable. He has to live in a very beat up apartment. He has to, get a job. He has to finish high school. I think they allude that he finishes high school like through a GED or something. Yeah. So spoiler warning, guys. Aunt May dies. But I think it's very fitting. I might get a lot of hate for this one, which I'm fine with because, I have a PS5 and a lot of people don't, so I think that's a big plus for me.
Ooh.
And I get to play the next Spider-Man game. Sorry, Xbox fans. Am I right?
Merry Christmas, Xbox.
Merry Christmas, Xbox. But Aunt May in these 3 movies fits that Uncle Ben role. And I think this 3rd movie really hammers that point home. She's the one that tells Peter, hey, with great power comes great responsibility. She literally says that line. She says that line.
Did she say that line?
She did say that line.
She says that line.
She says that line. And a lot of people might think, well, that kind of sucks because we never get this mention of Uncle Ben and we think that it can finally happen in this movie and that's how the line's going to hit. But to me, it doesn't really matter because Uncle Ben's spirit is in this movie. He's just in Aunt May. That's who Aunt May has to be for him. In a way...
He was also in Aunt May.
He was also in Aunt May, yes. Oh. Aunt May just fills in that Uncle Ben role, but just for these 3 movies. A lot of people say that No Way Home is kind of like when Spider-Man becomes Spider-Man, like when Peter really becomes Spider-Man. And I don't necessarily think that's true because I think by the end of Homecoming, he already is Spider-Man. I mean, technically, and just him sort of getting it. But I will agree that in this movie, he finally gets those missing elements. Those missing elements being, the great power comes great responsibility line that he kind of has to understand so he can, keep trying to, like he does in this movie, rehabilitate the villains. Because that's an important part of Spider-Man's character. Similar to someone like Superman or, very just like good-hearted, like most good-hearted heroes. At the end of the day, he wants to, stop these guys, but he also wants to make sure that if possible, these guys can change their ways. Spider-Man does that a lot in the comics. It's a thing where he wants to see if these guys can ever stop being evil and just fix them. I can fix him. That is a Spider-Man statement right there. Twitter didn't just make that up. That was Spider-Man first.
You want some feedback on that? What's going on?
No, I'm sorry. No, I forgot that you don't have Twitter anymore, so it doesn't really work.
Yeah.
That's a tough loss. Not thankfully.
Thankfully, I don't have Twitter.
Okay.
Thankfully, that doesn't work.
And No Way Home has possibly one of the like I said, Michael Giacchino, great, really good composer, creates a kick-ass Spider-Man soundtrack. But the way it hits in No Way Home, it's special. There's a specific scene when all 3 of the Spider-Man, I know, a nostalgia bait moment, but to me it was really cool when they finally just mask up and they all decide to work, like they figure out how to work together. There's this really, really good moment when they're swinging and then Tom Holland Spider-Man kind of like using their helping them with their momentum. He like webs both of them and then pulls them in forward, so then they're all going in at the same time. You remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, they make a hard turn.
Right? That was amazing, especially when that score hits, and then when they're all when they all give like their yell, like their Spider-Man yell, and they like land on Statue of Liberty, dude.
Their yell?
They do like they all have like their Spider-Man yell, like
when Toby goes.
Not like that. That's a really good one. We're gonna talk about the next in a few, but it's really well done. And I do think No Way Home is going to set a bad precedent for future movies. It already did with Jurassic World Dominion, where studios think, oh, we just got to bring back the old characters that everyone loves so then people can like this movie. That's not how it works. But I think No Way Home makes that work. I don't want to blame this. I don't want to blame this movie for what future movies do or studios do. It's not its fault. I mean, Marvel already is kind of going to do that as it is, but No Way Home just does it right. And it is a satisfying ending. It is a I use this word a lot, but it's important. It is a emotionally compelling story. It has some great fights. Oh, the fight in the apartment between Green Goblin and Tom Holland Spider-Man. Peter Parker. I'm sorry. There's three of them, so I have to make sure they know which Spider-Man it is. So Tom Holland Spider-Man versus Green Goblin in that apartment was sick. Green Goblin literally power bombs him, and then does a spine buster. He throws him up into the ceiling, catches him, and does come on.
He does. He spine busters.
He tries to do the
floors.
come on, it's sick.
Sick.
It was awesome. I don't know. Maybe I haven't seen it enough times, and that could I don't think so. I've seen it. I think I've seen it at least 3 times, and I can say it's still a great movie. And I do think it's a top 3 Spider-Man movie. Maybe 4. Maybe one day I think Homecoming is better, but it's just easy. It's kind of become like that easy 3rd spot for me. Sorry, guys. I like the John Watts trilogy for the most part. I think it's very well done. Thank you. Pizza Time. Oh my god. What movie am I referencing?
I don't know.
You don't know?
No.
It's Spider-Man 2.
Oh.
Spider-Man 2. Now, Spider-Man 2 could have gone down in the history books as the best Spider-Man movie of all time. In a way, it's the best live-action Spider-Man movie. Foreshadowing for what the first spot's going to be. And it is. I can just say a bunch of things, and a lot of people watching this video are going to be like, oh my god, that's incredible. You have Train. You have Joey Diaz. you have Here's Your Change. Dude. Alfred Molina as Dr. Otto Octavius? Come on. It doesn't get much better. That great shot. What's that shot they recreate from the comics? Peter walking away, his suit's in the trash can. Talk about a great shot. That's one of my catchphrases I think I'm going to start using. Now that is a great shot. And again, what's the most important part of any superhero movie? Understanding the main character. Spider-Man 2 it understands Peter Parker. It probably understands it the best, or it did until the next movie I'm going to talk about, but it gets it. Peter's life is supposed to suck. It really is. There's never a moment where you're supposed to go, hey, I want his life. Because you don't. It's a burden. That's the point of being Spider-Man. It's a gift and a curse. But you're supposed to go... It's never supposed to be where you don't go, hey, it really sucks for him, but he has these important things that keep him going. And what is that? He has Aunt May. He has New York City that love him and appreciate him. That they decide to not give away his identity. You wanna know why? Because they love Spider-Man. We all love Spider-Man. That scene right there was a fourth wall break. Because if I saw Tobey Maguire on the street, I'd say, hey, your secret's safe with me. Seriously, I would do that. You have pizza, Spider-Man staple. I can't believe I was going to talk about the Spider-Man trilogy without mentioning J. Jonah Jameson. He is giving the best performance in any Spider-Man movie. This is a performance where when you're reading a Spider-Man comic again, you go, wait a minute, why am I hearing J.K. Simmons' voice while I'm reading a J. Jonah Jameson dialogue bubble? It's because it's that good. It's that iconic. The laugh, the mustache, the jokes. Hoffman. Slander is spoken. In print, it's liable. That's one of the funniest jokes in a movie ever. Ever. And just that really good scene where he puts on the Spider-Man suit, he's doing, goofy stuff, and then he goes, you know what? Spider-Man was a hero and I didn't see it. And then when Peter steals his suit back, he goes, psych! I hate this guy. J. Jonah Jameson to Spider-Man is Skip Bayless to LeBron. How does this affect LeBron's legacy? How does this affect Spider-Man's legacy? Let's be honest here. But that's what makes you love him so much. And going back to Spider-Man 1, he's still a good guy. He could have given up Peter's identity that one time as a photographer, and he didn't do it. Because J. Jonah Jameson, great character. But I'm sidetracking. I already talked about Spider-Man 1. Let's keep talking a little bit more about Spider-Man 2. This movie is hilarious. It's well shot. Of course, it's a Sam Raimi movie. It has arguably the greatest action scene in a Spider-Man movie. That train scene is unbeatable. I don't even think the movie I'm going to talk about next has an action sequence better. That doesn't mean it's it's beautiful. It is actually poetry in motion. Genuinely, I believe so. And you have a really good ending. An ending that could have set up some really good plot elements for Spider-Man 3. Ultimately, that didn't happen. But it is such a Spider-Man staple for Mary Jane to be with Peter, but knowing that she's not always going to be with him because he's Spider-Man, and that's the obstacles that come with that relationship. So seeing him swing out into the city, ready to, do his thing while Mary Jane looks on is beautiful. That's Spider-Man 101. It's so refreshing to see that on screen. And what more can I say except I wish Sam Raimi directed every superhero movie. Just facts. Yeah, Spider-Man 2. It's that good. It is. It really is that good. The no-brainer choice of this list. I said it. Spider-Verse is the greatest Spider-Man movie ever made. And I don't think it'll ever be topped. Why do I think that? Spider-Verse isn't just a movie. It's a deconstruction. It's a love letter. It is a group of animators, filmmakers, writers that came together and said, hey, we're going to devote as much time, energy, blood, sweat, tears, everything into making the perfect Spider-Man movie. A Spider-Man movie that doesn't just understand the character, but it is one of the most powerful messages that a movie can have. When it comes to it taps into that element of Spider-Man that a lot of people sometimes overlook, which is anybody can be him. Anybody can wear the suit. You can wear the suit, right? So you have this character of Miles, who a lot of people weren't a big fan of him in the comics because they just thought he was just the same. He was just a weaker version of Peter Parker. But in this movie, that opinion gets completely changed. He is his own character. Him developing into Spider-Man is him evolving as a character, something that he doesn't really get in the comics because you don't have the right people at the helm. But with Spider-Verse, you do. He has his own flair. He has his own way of handling situations different from Peter. And having this dichotomy of Miles, he's a young guy trying to understand how to be Spider-Man, with an aged Peter Parker, which the fact that they use his middle name to show that he's experienced as, and at the end of being Spider-Man is genius, because it doesn't just show Miles the ins and outs, but it also gives Peter B. Parker, or just Spider-Man, it's Peter Parker. They confirmed it was 616 Peter Parker anyway. Why it was so fun being Spider-Man and why he loved being Spider-Man. And they also have the same arc. You see how the big phrase is, it's a leap of faith, that's when you'll know. It doesn't just work with Miles when he finally transitions into Spider-Man. It also works for Peter when he finally decides to go back to his dimension and, go to Mary Jane and say, hey, I want to make this work. It is perfect. It is simple but effective storytelling. I was literally just having this conversation with, the other fellow OMOM members here right now. But there's beauty in simplicity. And when you're telling a superhero story, especially one that's like this insane. You have like, Spider-Man coming from so many dimensions. You have Spider-Man Noir, you have Spider-Ham, you have what's the anime one's name?
Penny Parker.
Penny Parker with her like a Spider-Man Spider-Mech, which is pretty cool too. I really like. You have a Spider-Gwen, and then you have all these things being thrown at you. Just taking the time to really develop the story and let it unfold in a, natural way, to where when you finally get all these spider people to meet up, it's like it really hits at the right time, because you get these moments already, and then when you get to this part, it starts to set in how big, like how like large scale this movie is, but at the same time how homey it feels, because this is very much Miles' story. And just like No Way Home has characters from previous Spider-Man movies that come into the story to kind of help Peter, Tom Holland's Spider-Man, reach his potential and his growth. It's the same thing with Spider-Verse. These characters that teach Miles what it is to be Spider-Man, and the fact that anyone can be him as long as they believe. It's a leap of faith. You also have a pretty great soundtrack. Songs that hit at the right moments where you go, wow, this bangs. Right? Sunflower, good song. You have they have the Juice WRLD song. It's good too. Juice WRLD song was good when it hits as well.
What was the song?
When it gets dark outside. That's the one that Alex likes a lot too.
Oh, like in the montage after.
Yeah, when he's like really sad. Come on, and dude, Prowler's theme. That's like Uncut Gems levels of anxiety right there. Also, Kingpin takes up 80% of the screen. Very intimidating, but also very well done. Just like I said with The Amazing Spider-Man 2, but this time on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. There's not much I can already say about this movie that just watching it already says. This is the perfect Spider-Man story. It is an 11 out of 10, and I think anyone that truly loves the character will watch this movie and go, that's why I love Spider-Man. That is why I care about this character so much. This fictional character that even as I get older, I cherish and I admire. It is because of movies like Spider-Verse, and I'm going to go back. It's because of movies like Spider-Man 2, because of movies like, just that whole Raimi trilogy, Homecoming, No Way Home. It's because of movies like this where you go, God, Spider-Man really is the GOAT, right? But I don't want to digress there either, because, like I said, Spider-Verse, it's in a league of its own, seriously. You have to just watch it to really grasp it in what I'm trying to say. It's like so many things right through my mind right now about explaining it. But I'm going to let the movie do the rest. If you haven't seen it yet, please go watch it. So there you have it. That's my Spider-Man movie ranking tier list. As you can see, just like my Kanye video, I really like Spider-Man. He's a cool guy. It's just, it's something I've been wanting to do for a while now, because it just comes, that's what No Banana Peels is for, really. Just a conversation that just comes, it's just opinions that I really want to express, and it's just easy. Right off the tongue, I already know what I want to say, because they're so important to me, right? Spider-Man is this character that no matter how bad it might eventually get with maybe a movie or a series or whatever gets made, it's Spider-Man. How can you not love him? His name isn't, Spider-Bad.
He's like the Brendan Fraser of superheroes.
That's a pretty good analogy, actually. I would say more he's like...
I wasn't the biggest fan of George of the Jungle, I'm going to be honest.
Yeah. I would say... Well, yeah. I would say more like he's like the Keanu Reeves of superheroes.
Or that, yeah, too. That works.
Or he's like the Stanley Kubrick of superheroes. Alright, no, never mind. Please watch these Spider-Man movies again. If there's any things you disagree with, leave it in the comments below. Hit the bell. Subbun's gonna be over here.
Don't do this. You gotta leave with our integrity.
No, I'm joking. But yeah, hopefully I changed your mind on some Spider-Man movies. Maybe I didn't, and you're gonna tell me in the comment section how my list is wrong. Totally reasonable, but I hope that what you really got out of this is that Spider-Man, he's special. He's the best. And I know I could end this video off in a corny way and say, remember guys, with great power comes great responsibility. But I'd rather say something like, live, laugh, then you have to finish it.
I'm not condoning this.
And love. I'm out, guys. Thank you. That was good. That was a great ending. I liked that a lot. That was awesome. I think this one might be longer than the Kanye one.